Hello, Happy New Year. It is Monday, January 3rd, and it is the first live that I'm doing for the new year. And given that people are still saying Happy New Year to each other, I thought it would be a great time to look at what makes people happy. How much do we say Happy New Year and then we're not feeling happy for very long into it, right? How much do we say last year was terrible, the last 2 years are terrible, may this coming year not be terrible? And that's just a common conversation that I'm hearing everywhere. So people are wanting to feel happy, people are tired of feeling upset. And what is it? What is it that makes the difference on how you're going to feel regardless of how this year unfolds? So that's the topic that I wanted to dive into today. And I think it's really actually very important. Maybe sounds a little frivolous initially, but it's not, because so many people are living like they're surviving life. They're living from a place of fear. They're living from a place of stress and anxiety. And I don't think that that's why we're here. I lived that way for a really, really long time. And it took me my own experiences and a lot of work and a lot of training to figure out how not to do that. So I want to share some of that with you tonight. Now, this is being streamed in 3 different places. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. If I don't see it from where you're seeing this, I'll certainly go back and look, and I would love to answer questions. I'm also going to have us do some work together. So if you are watching, please grab a notebook, a piece of paper, a pen, because we're going to do a little bit of writing just to see if we can shift something for you tonight in this conversation, okay? So when we think about New Year's and we're saying Happy New Year, have a great year coming, a lot of people will put in place some goals or resolutions. They get resolute or commit to new things. And then by February 1st, 50% of that has already stopped. So I want to ask you a question. Just think for a minute. If you started this new year with some thoughts of, I want to have these goals, I want to have these resolutions, however you phrase it, I'm recommitting to something, and you notice that those are the same things that you committed to last year, or have you ever committed to the same things, losing some amount of weight, improving your relationship, getting a relationship, changing your financial situation, whatever it is? Just notice if you have those same commitments or resolutions or goals every year, and they kind of fall off at some point. So statistics show actually that by February 1st, 50% of people have already given up on their goals. And if having a happy new year is a goal, that's a big one, right? That's what I want to talk about tonight. But whatever the goal is, 50% of the people have given up on it by February 1st. And by the end of the year, typically about 8% of people have actually attained whatever their goals are, which is not a very high number in my opinion. And certainly, if your goal is to be happy, if your goal is to finally get over the hump and the stress of the past 2 years and to feel happy again, you don't want to be in that 92% that doesn't make it happen. So how do we do that? It's a couple of things. I'm going to give you a couple of steps and a process. And again, as I said, grab a piece of paper and a pen so that you can write this down. But number one, in starting to have happiness be a part of your life, regardless of what's going on, have happiness be your daily experience, no matter what the news is saying, no matter what your doctor says, no matter what's going on in your household. And here's, if you don't know me, if you don't know much about me, what I want to share with you is I've had personal experiences that were very, very difficult to feel happy when they were going on. And there was a lot of time when I didn't feel happy. So I have 2 children, and my daughter passed away 2 years ago. So I've experienced the loss of a child. Her whole life, she was in the hospital. And so I had to consistently deal with circumstances that were not what I wanted, news that was devastating to receive, right? I had to consistently do that. And for a long time, I didn't know how to be happy while experiencing that. But I'm grateful to say I knew that I wanted to live differently. I knew that I wanted to be able to have the tools to be happy regardless of what's happening. So in the first year of this pandemic, somebody actually interviewed me because I would say it was maybe like around May or June of 2020, after we had been a few months in the pandemic and people were really struggling. And someone reached out to me and said, I want to interview you because I think people need to understand how they can feel happy as we're dealing with this. Now, of course, back in the spring of 2020, who knew that we were still going to be going on? Here we are, 2 years later. And the same thing was true for my daughter. When she was born, she was rushed for open heart surgery on the night that she was born. And we thought, okay, she was born with a heart issue. They fixed it. We're going to recover from this, and then we're going to get back to life as we would expect it. And that didn't happen. We got the next terrible thing and the next terrible thing. She had a stroke. She went into kidney failure. She needed a kidney transplant. She ended up getting cancer in her brain from the immunosuppression of the transplant drugs. So it was one devastating thing after another. And I kind of feel like globally, that's what's happened. We keep waiting for things to get better. And when it gets better, then we're going to live life again. And even before the pandemic, that might have been your modus operandi, right? Maybe it's like, when I get X, and you can fill in X, then I'm going to be happy. Then life is going to go the way I want it. So it becomes a very externally driven method of living your life. It's really based on, if things work out the way I want them to, the way I hope them to, the way that I'm working towards, then I'll be happy. And if they don't, I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to feel stressed, anxious, upset, like I was dealt a bad hand. And what if you could actually flip that and generate your happiness regardless of what's going on the outside? You generate it from inside. Because the way of living where it's externally driven is very risky, because you may or may not get those circumstances. It may or may not work out. And then you're kind of left with, all right, it didn't. So now what? Now my life just sucks. I don't have anything that I want in my life. Or even worse, it does work out. You get that goal, you attain, we would have a major surgery, like, oh, she needs a kidney transplant. We got the kidney transplant. But 6 months later, there was something else now equally devastating. So now we have to deal with that. So even if you do get the goal, pretty soon there's something else to contend with. So those external measures that we use to actually decide if our life is good and if we can be happy really work against us. Okay? So as I said, we're going to do a couple of exercises together. You want to have a piece of paper and a pen, as I'm seeing some people join, so that you can write some things down if you want to participate, or you can just listen. But I want to do something first as an exercise. You don't need to write, but just to drive this point home, is that we are wired in a particular way. You are wired since childhood to kind of look at the world the way your parents did, the way your caregivers, the people that you were around as you grew up, the way that they looked at the world. So if they looked at the world in that way, so do you. And in order to do some of the work that we're going to do together tonight, you have to rewire, which means change the neural pathways of how your brain thinks. So here's a little exercise just to get a sense of how easy not this is. So I want you to just give yourself some space on your chair and stick your right leg straight out. So you can't see my foot, but my leg is straight out. And I want you to take your foot and go in clockwise circles. Okay, clockwise circles with your foot. Keep that going. Now I want you to take your right hand and draw the number 6. Keep your clockwise foot going as you draw the number 6 and tell me what happened. If you can want to write it in the comments, go ahead. But what happened? As soon as you added your hand, your foot stopped going clockwise and started going counterclockwise, because when you draw the number 6, we go counterclockwise. And so your hand and your foot right now are wired to work together. Well, I shouldn't say right now. They're going to stay wired to work together. But the way that we would be able to do that exercise, because typically we make the number 6 like that. We go in a counterclockwise while your foot's going clockwise, and your brain can't do it. It's like, nope, not going to happen. And so you see the world in a particular way. And that's the way you're used to seeing it. That's the way your brain is used to working. And if you wanted to do something differently, it's like, nope, not going to happen. We have to figure out a different way. So to do that exercise with your hand and your foot, what you would have to do, keep your foot going in the clockwise circles, and then you would take your hand, just because there's people out here and I can't see all the comments, I'm just going to tell you the answer and see if it makes sense for you. But you're going to take your hand and you're going to draw that number 6 from the loop up. So normally we would draw number 6 down and do the loop. You would do it in the opposite direction. If you start and do the loop and then go up, now you're doing it in that same clockwise direction that your foot's going. And now with just a little bit of practice, you would be able to get that working together, because you've now created a different pathway. Your initial pathway that you were taught in school was to do the 6 in a particular way. So that's an example of what I mean by rewiring. Okay, rewiring the way that you see the world and the way that you look at things. So we will do an exercise in a minute. I'm just scooting back now on my chair. We will do an exercise on your paper, but here's a couple of things to think about before we jump in and do that. When you think of how you view the world and your level of happiness, I want you to take a moment and just notice, do you typically look at problems or do you notice solutions? So most of us are problem driven. We see the problem. Something happens, it's a problem. We watch the news, this is a problem. We receive personal news, this is a problem. I even know people who start many sentences with, the problem with this is blah, blah, blah. The problem is blah, blah, blah. And it becomes a very efficient way of trying to control the world, right? If I can jump in and see the problems, I can get out in front of them. So I'm going to look for the problems. And our brain, speaking of hardwiring, our brain is actually wired to notice the problems so that we can protect ourselves, right? The brain is constantly scanning, where is there a threat? Where is there a problem? So we can protect ourselves. However, that really works against you if you want to feel happy and if you want to cause solutions. So if you want to cause solutions in your life, you want to start looking through the lens of what are the solutions, right? You want to look for and see solutions everywhere. You don't want to see the problems, you want to see solutions. So again, it might sound like, oh, how do I do that? And it's similar to the exercise that we just did with your hand and your foot. It feels very different, but it's being solution oriented. And when you can become solution oriented, you start to see the world in a different way. And when you start to see the world from a place of solutions, from a place of opportunities, from a place of possibilities, not from what's wrong, but rather from how it could work out, then you're starting to generate your feelings from inside and not waiting for things to actually work out so that you can feel better. So that's one initial step that you can start to take right now. Just notice, am I a person who tends to focus on the problems? You know, when you get home at the end of the day, Is it, ugh, this, and this happened. This is terrible. Or is it, wow, I was able to overcome that. Wow, I was able to come up with a solution for this. And even as you're relating your day to your partner, to your family, going over it yourself, you come from a solution based mindset. Okay, so that would be one easy thing that you could do right now. I wrote down a couple of things. Okay, the next thing I want you to think about is how often your emotions are in the realm of you're angry, you're frustrated, you're fearful, you're resigned, anything like that. And if you can pick, here's where we're going to use your paper now, because I want to just try to keep it to about a half hour. So we'll just do this exercise together. What I'd like you to do is think of a time recently, sometime today, yesterday, in the last couple of days, where you were in one of those feelings. You were in a feeling of anger. You were feeling frustrated, fearful, whatever it is. Okay. Now, I don't want you to pick one that's a really big one, like something really, an event that is really a major big deal, because I'm not even working with you personally. I'm just walking you through an exercise. And that might take more than what we're going to do here. But pick something sort of, not that big of a deal. It's still annoying you maybe, or you're still feeling frustrated about it, but it's not like some serious issue in your life. Okay. So think of that event, and I want you to write it down, and I want you to write it in one or two sentences, like write it out. Like, let me see if I can give you an example. Yesterday, my partner yelled at me, or my boss. Yesterday, so and so yelled at me. Or I got a letter in the mail about I owe taxes or something. I got a letter that I owe a few $1,000s in taxes that I wasn't expecting. Or I spilled coffee on my shirt while I was driving to work. It could be even something little like that. Okay, so write it down. Write out whatever the event is, and it's fresh in your memory, something that made you feel angry, frustrated, fearful, not a major thing, but something along those lines. Okay, hopefully you've got that, because I can't really see people. If we were on a Zoom, I could actually see you and we could be working together. But anyway, step number 2, I want you to write down your feelings about that event. So you picked an event, but now I want you to really find the word to describe the feelings. So that's important, that you actually can get in touch with, how do I feel? Because there's nuances, right? It could be frustrated, annoyed, scared, angry, pissed off. Okay, so write down 2 or 3 word phrases, 2 or 3 words. It doesn't have to be one word, about how you feel about that event. It could be disappointed. It could be confused. Confused is a feeling. All right. It doesn't have to be just one feeling. Okay. Now, step number 3, I want you to notice what meaning you gave the event that happened. So, my ex yelled at me, partner, boss, whatever. Let's use boss. My boss yelled at me. And that made me feel angry. What is the meaning that you gave your boss yelling at you? So it could be something like, he doesn't respect me. He's very controlling and demanding. He doesn't appreciate the work that I do. He thinks I'm a fraud and not good at my job. I'm just making this up. Whatever is your event, what did you make it mean when that happened? So this is important to notice, and this is going to be hopefully an easy, simple exercise that you can leave this live with an opening to see, because hopefully you can start to see what happened. My boss yelled at me. He doesn't respect me. He doesn't think I'm a good worker. All of that meaning is something that you created. So this is how our brain works. We have our five senses, right? We see, we hear, we touch, we smell, we taste. And that's how our brain receives information. So something happens, you're out in the world, something happens, somebody says something, looks at you a certain way, and that information comes into your brain, right? So you hear the words, you see their face, that information comes into your brain, and at the absolute same time, simultaneously, your brain interprets it. So it's not just the information coming in, loud words, body language that you see. That information comes in, but in the very same moment, your brain interprets it. We never, ever, ever bring information in without interpreting it. It's just the way that we're wired, right? We interpret it. And so that interpretation is going to determine how you feel. It's the interpretation that you give that event will determine how you feel. So that's why I started with your feelings. Like, think about something when you recently felt angry or fearful or whatever, because the feelings tell you that you interpreted something in a particular way. So you may be thinking, well, I didn't interpret it. He was angry at me. He doesn't respect me. And here's where I want to invite you to just like we did the foot and the hand, okay? Just like we had to look and see that there's a different way that you want to look at something, let's apply that to this conversation and this exercise, okay? Because it really, really occurs so simultaneously that it feels like it is the truth, like that is the reality, the meaning that we give the event, the interpretation that we give the event feels like it is actually part of the event, but it's not. The event is just what happened. It's just a man yelling, or a woman, or whatever, right? Or whatever you picked. I'm going to just stick with this example. Somebody yelled at you. Now, if you're like, well, what else could it mean if they yelled at me? Let's just take a look. Because it's possible that something else was going on other than they think you're not good at your job or they don't respect you. It could be that they just hung up 5 minutes ago with a call from home and something terrible happened at home. And now they're upset and it's coming out in their communication with you. It could be they have a migraine headache and they realize they can't leave because stuff's going on and their head is killing them, whatever. It could be that they were supposed to do something and they realized that they didn't, and they're frustrated and upset with themselves, and it's coming out in the communication. That's just 3 possible could be's in the moment that I just thought of. But if you can take a minute and just stop and think, okay, what actually happened was a person was yelling and expressing anger. Does that actually mean, number one, that they think I'm not good at my job or that they don't respect me? Does it mean that? So you want to stop and ask yourself, does it really mean that, or did I add that to the scene? And there's multiple tools. Like, we could be on, this could be a 90-minute call where we actually go through all of the different tools. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm just trying to give you the easiest way to, in the moment, see that. You could be driving on the road. You're driving along, somebody cuts you off. They didn't put their blinker on. Next thing you know, they're pulling in front of your lane. And you're really pissed off, right? what it, what kind of a person drives like that. They're careless. They don't care about me and my family, all the things that you make it mean. And then if you stop and look, you might say, have I ever crossed into a lane without putting my blinker on? I think in the, how old am I? 57. 40 years I've been driving. I think I've done that a couple of times, right? So, yes, sometimes people do that. Does it mean that I am a careless idiot? No, it doesn't. So, does it mean that they are a careless idiot? Maybe not. And as soon as you can even just get there, you can notice your feeling of frustration, your feeling of anger dissipating. And so, when we talk about feeling happy, going through your life feeling happy on a regular basis, these are the instances and the events that are happening all day long that put you right in a place of frustration and anger over and over and over and over again. So it's one piece of rewiring, it's one tool to look at, but it's a really critical and helpful one. I started with, are you a problem focused person or are you a solutions focused person? That alone is going to determine how you feel on a regular basis. Number two, how do you interpret the events? Recognizing that your brain automatically, immediately, always interprets as something's happening. And is your interpretation necessarily true? Your feelings are always 100% always the result of the interpretation that you made. They always are. So if you can start to look at how you interpret things, stop, ask yourself a question, you can actually really shift your feelings a lot right in the moment. Okay? Another thing that I want to share with you, and then it's been 30 minutes, so I'll wrap it up with this. But one more thing is to look at, are your choices and your goals in your life, are they very ego driven or are they soul driven? So if you're not a person who's very much in touch with your soul, if you're very much on this, human experience, which is fine, but not really paying attention to that your soul is actually a big part of the whole picture, you might want to start to look at that. But if your choices and your actions are very much driven by your ego and your humanness, that doesn't feel great a lot of the time. So what do I mean by that? And this is how we're going to end. When it's driven by your ego, so let's just say you made a New Year's resolution to lose 20 pounds, and you've done that for the last 20 years. Every New Year's, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, right? When it's ego-based, that goal or intention, it feels very contracted. It feels like you're forcing and working. It feels like a struggle. And ego-based means it's based in judgment. It's based in you judging yourself or you thinking other people are judging you. And none of that feels good, which is why it doesn't feel good when you make that goal. So it's this goal that you think you want all the time, or you want, but all the reasons why you want it are very ego-based. People will like me better. I'm going to show up better. I'll feel better about myself because I don't like how I look right now. I know you've had these thoughts. I know I'm not the only one, right? So whatever your goal is, financial goal, I want to be successful. Why? So my partner thinks I'm great. So my parents are happy. So I can keep up with the Joneses. Those are all ego-based actions, intentions, and goals, and they don't feel good. So that's your clue. Does it make me feel good or does it make me feel contracted? Do I feel like I'm struggling? Do I feel like I'm judging? Do I feel like I'm efforting my way through life with a lot of work? Now shift that and change your goals to be very soul driven. So you can have the same goal, but you want to create it from a place that is from your soul and not from your ego. So let's use your weight. I want to lose 20 pounds because I want to honor the body that I'm living in. And I want my external body to be a great representation of the radiant energy that I have inside. Something like that. Okay. That becomes a soul intention. That becomes a place where you don't feel contracted. You actually feel expanded. You feel like, oh, I would like to do that. I would like to have radiant, vibrant energy and have my external body reflect that. That feels good. I want to every day sort of work on that, come from that place, as opposed to, oh, there I went. I just ate something that's not going to help me lose my weight. Now I'm bad. All of the judging, that's ego based. So if every day you're coming from a lot of ego based thoughts and patterns and choices and behaviors, you don't feel good. You feel judged, unworthy. And that whole worthiness, self-love, that could be another 10 minutes, which would be another step I would talk about. But you don't feel good about the goals that you're setting. And then when they don't happen, the judgments, yep, see, I didn't do it again. See, I'm not good enough. See, I always mess up, whatever it is. But if you're always coming from a soul-based intention, a place that's not judging, but actually loving from your heart, it doesn't feel like effort. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel hard. And also, the ego is very self-focused, right? Is this good for me? Am I going to have success? Oftentimes it's at the expense of someone else. I want to win and be right so they can look wrong and lose. So if you start to create your choices and your views from a place of, how can I win in a way that everybody else does? How can I create goals that actually serve other people, not just me? How can I have a financial goal that will then make a difference in the world? Not just me making my parents proud of me or keeping up with the Joneses, but so that I actually have resources to share with the world. That's a soul-based goal that makes you happy and feel expanded. I hope I'm making the point here. And I do want to, I know I'm going over from what I intended, but I do want to just say one more thing because I think this would be helpful for you. You want to look at how you feel about yourself, your own self-worth, your worthiness, okay, and your ability to love yourself, because a lot of people are not experiencing their life through a lens of self-love. They're experiencing their life through the judgments and the expectations that they heard growing up and that they placed on themselves. So you have to, in order to really, really feel happy, you have to have a sense of who you are and that you are worthy. And that's one of the biggest things when I work with clients that comes up over and over and over again, is they don't inherently feel that. They think up here they do, but in their body they don't. Or they even recognize they don't up here. So here's some questions to ask yourself. Number one, do you feel comfortable when someone pays you a compliment, or do you deflect it? I was queen of this, and I'm really practiced now to just say thank you. So when somebody says, hey, that looks great on you, or wow, you did a great job, or oh my gosh, this tastes so good, you made a great roast or whatever, and you go, oh, it was no big deal. Oh, whatever, I just pulled that together. Oh, no, I think I kind of look fat in this. Whatever you say to deflect, you want to start to notice. because that's an indication of how you really feel about yourself. Number 2, do you have a hard time accepting gifts? So somebody offers you something and you're like, no, 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 no. I don't need that. Thank you, but I don't need that. No, you should keep that. No, we should give that to someone else, whatever it is, right? Just a hard time accepting gifts. Number 3, you feel like you shouldn't receive support or it makes you feel guilty. Like if somebody actually helps you, anything from, and I think women are really classic with this, but anything from, you're on a committee at school to help in the house, you think you're supposed to do it all. If someone does help you, you feel guilty. You don't want to really accept that, or because they help you, now you have to give back even more. You have to give back twice as much just to like make up for the fact that you received help. And by the way, you feel resentful deep down because you're not accepting help and you are doing things all the time. And so there's a place where you have resentment. That's going to block you from feeling happy. Okay? The next one is when things do come easily for you, you feel bad. You feel bad like you're supposed to struggle. It's not supposed to be easy. You're supposed to really be working hard. Everybody else does. And if something does seem to come easy for you, you feel bad about it rather than enjoying it. You feel like you have to dim your light around other people. So instead of expanding and sharing who you are and making choices from a soul level, you're worried about the judgment. You dim yourself so you don't eclipse someone else. You feel guilty. You don't accept the support. And then all of that has a place inside of you feeling sad, feeling resentful, feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. So you're putting yourself in this place, keeping you sad, resentful, exhausted, and overwhelmed. But you can't get out of that because you keep this unworthiness behavior in place. And so learning to love yourself without conditions, regardless of what your body looks like, regardless of your accomplishments, regardless of your education or your finances, no conditions. Self-esteem is about conditions. We get self-esteem, and it's important to develop self-esteem as you're growing up. Kids need to have good self-esteem, but we get self-esteem by accomplishing things, right? When a child gets a good grade, they bring it home, they get praised, and now they have, I can do a good job in school. That's the way self-esteem is built, but it has conditions around it. People don't learn to love themselves when they build their self-esteem. And I'm not saying that self-esteem isn't important, but you want to learn how to love yourself even if you don't get the accomplishment. You want to learn how to love yourself unconditionally, regardless of how your body looks, how your body changes as you age, what you accomplish, what your finances are. So that's another big place of where we need to rewire so that you can have the experience of happiness in your life. Okay, totally over time from what I intended. But I'm so happy to start this new year with you. I'm so happy to share a couple of these tips. I would love to know if you got anything out of any of the conversation that we did, or if you did the exercise, please drop me a line. And if you really see like, I'm stuck, I don't know how to rewire so I can make my hand and my foot go in the same direction. And it's time. I don't want to feel resentful, exhausted, overwhelmed, angry anymore. I want to feel happy and joyful and expanded and living from my soul and my heart. Let me know, because I'm starting the next program for that in a couple of weeks, and I would love to share the details with you. Okay? But regardless of wherever you go in your next steps, I want you to have a happy new year. Okay? So I'm wishing that for you. And I will see you, I'm sure, again sometime this week. All right? Have a great night. Bye.